Read How to Lead, a straightforward book review on a top book on leading. Today we consider Think Like a Rocket Scientist. Uncertainty is the first concept discussed. Now we know we all crave certainty, but progress really requires that we leave the comfort of those absolutes and those knowns. Negative thoughts can resonate and linger, and you'd rather go into a lighted room as opposed to something that's dark and maybe you don't know what's in there awaiting you. Most people and businesses will choose the safety of light. But this book asks you to consider the best and worst case scenarios and give it some free thought. Because if you don't, you're likely to continue just to choose safety and certainty. Now, the book uses stories, as you might imagine from the name, that are related to space travel to drive home points. Think about President Kennedy's 1961 goal to put a man on the moon in a decade. It was a big goal that really crashed into uncertainty. Some of the elements that would be necessary to accomplish that goal hadn't even been discovered or invented. But if we hadn't stepped into uncertainty, we would never have made progress the way we did. Another concept the book asks you to consider is status quo. I kind of like the example of cab companies in, say, the 70s, the 80s. They were probably thinking, boy, the biggest competition I'll ever face are other cab companies. But they were wrong. Think Lyft and Uber. That status quo thinking can really lure you into, this may be the way things will always be. Why, I can just count on it and plan for this way. The default can become so powerful it crowds out creative thought. This book also talks about the idea of a thought experiment. So here you step back from both certainty and the status quo. Your mind creates a different universe where things work differently, better, more efficiently. It's all about getting options and possibilities on the table. Albert Einstein really endorsed this idea of kind of a combination play. This can involve you exploring outside your domain, because revolution in one industry can begin with an idea in a completely unrelated industry. But it can also involve inviting outsiders in. Fresh thinkers really aren't haunted by the way it's always been done and the way we've always seen it done. They're able to pull back into those first principles, the really basic facts, the basic question, the basic truth. So now on to first stages. With our awareness and having open minds and being willing to explore possibilities, we turn to the problem or the goal or the issue that's front and center. But the book makes the point that you really need to make sure that you're solving the actual problem. You're getting to the actual question. Interesting story about a group that was intent on improving the chance for survival of preemie babies born in rural areas of third world countries. Preemies have a tough time regulating body temperature, and in the United States, they'd be put in an incubator to keep warm. The obvious solution, and one everybody thought would be the solution, is to get more incubators out. It takes a lot of money, and there were other problems. But if you strip the question down to really first principles, to the primary issue, the team came up with what sounded like to me an insulated, high-tech sleeping bag that would solve the problem of infant body temperature. A rocket scientist principle is test as you fly and fly as you test. And the author really encourages you to keep testing your product, your theory, your solution in kind of identical solutions, nearly identical circumstances, as will be present in the real world. Don't forget to test out and try other hypotheses along the way as well. And that brings us to failure. The book makes a powerful case that organizations and people should support intelligent failure. It's best to make it psychologically safe to question decisions, processes, procedures, everything. Because if you punish all failure, employees will inevitably underreport failure. They're scared to tell you what happened. And if you also punish all failure, you're not going to get anybody to ever quit. They'll just keep doing things that are wrong or inefficient because they don't want to be seen as a failure. Sometimes we need to zoom out and take a broader lens look at things. When you come to realize that failure is really just data, it's just the fact of a certain outcome that happened. You can learn from mistakes. And finally, successes. The book makes the interesting point that near misses, where one plane comes dangerously close to another, can really be failures that masquerade as successes. Those two things can be just two sides of one coin. If only utter failures are your learning opportunities, you may be missing out. Consider the Space Shuttle Challenger. This space shuttle disaster in 1986 was found to be caused by O-ring failures at low temperatures. Previous launches with the same O-rings were fine. They were successful. And each one of those successes reinforced a belief in the status quo. An engineer had identified that this O-ring failure problem could be present. He even identified it before the disaster. But everyone suffered from this skewed picture of the status quo being a string of successes rather than maybe near misses. Overall, that's a great book for anyone or maybe an organization that's trying to practice breakout thinking or they're looking to encourage employee engagement. I love books about leadership and I always learn something from reading them. So I invite you to like and subscribe to the channel if you want to read along with me. And feel free to comment below, tell me what you thought about my video and suggest books to me that you'd like to see reviewed right here.